In midair, the massive verdant wood ring dissipated, transforming into countless green light dots that floated down, enveloping the figure below. Outside Spiritual Treasure Mountain, the scene was silent. The faces of the various teams were frozen in disbelief. The situation before them had clearly taken an unexpected turn. This was supposed to be Mu Chen's fatal predicament, yet, suddenly, the tides shifted. The violent war puppet had split into two. And what about that verdant wood ring? Hadn't Mu Chen's previous attack missed? How had it appeared again? Confusion filled the faces of many. Clearly, they had not yet recovered from the abrupt change in circumstances. When Qing Xian, with her narrow phoenix eyes, stared at the figure and softly said, "Did he intentionally shoot the verdant wood ring underground?" Impressive. After executing his killing move, he could still bury another one. When the verdant wood ring's attack missed and pierced into the earth, Mu Chen didn't immediately reactivate it. Instead, he allowed it to remain buried, knowing that the war puppet's astonishing speed meant that if he revealed it immediately, it would likely miss. So, he waited for the right moment, simultaneously lowering his defenses and using himself as bait to lure the war puppet into striking him. Only then could he seize the chance to deliver a fatal blow. What seemed like a simple tactic contained decisiveness, courage, and perhaps confidence, which left a strong impact on others. After all, his previous attack had been like thunder, and at that moment, even Mu Chen himself hadn't expected the war puppet to avoid his well-planned strike. But despite this, he didn't allow himself to become complacent. After one killing move, he buried another, saving the final strike for his enemy. That wasn't really intentional, was it? He just tends to add an extra layer of security, Luoli said softly. However, when Qing Xian could still see the faint rise and fall of the young girl's chest, and in her voice, there was an almost imperceptible sigh of relief. Clearly, during Mu Chen's battle with the war puppet, her heart hadn't been as calm as her outward expression suggested. Truly the blood calamity of Spirit Road, when Qing Xian said with a smile, "I imagine if he hadn't been expelled from Spirit Road, he would be even more formidable now. In that case, the Spirit Crown might not be mine." Mu Chen's strength hadn't particularly impressed the proud Wen Qing Xian, but his displayed courage and confidence in battle had certainly made her eyes brighten. At the back, Wang Zhong gazed at the scene with a dark expression. Although the situation had taken an exciting turn, what he wanted to see was not this. He would have preferred to see Mu Chen defeated by the war puppet and imprisoned here. Moreover, the tactics Mu Chen displayed had made Wang Zhong feel some wariness and concern. He knew that if he were the one dealing with the war puppet, it would be hard to accomplish what Mu Chen had. This guy. Wang Zhong's eyes darkened as he watched Mu Chen. The new generation really was annoying. Jixin was like this, and now Mu Chen was too. In contrast to Wang Zhong's grim mood, Wu Yingying's expression was more complicated. She stared at Mu Chen, gritting her silver teeth. Her pale oval face was filled with resentment, but there was also a trace of admiration, one she might not even admit to herself. Despite the awful things Mu Chen had done to her, she had to acknowledge that he was indeed outstanding. Back in the Spirit Road, Wu Yingying had been enraged by Mu Chen's actions and nearly lost her mind. Afterward, she searched everywhere for him, hoping for vengeance, but the Spirit Road was vast, and she never found him. When she next heard Mu Chen's name, he had already been expelled from the Spirit Road. At that time, she learned that Mu Chen had earned the title of Blood Calamity of Spirit Road. Upon hearing about the Blood Calamity, she had been deeply shaken. The first time they met, Mu Chen hadn't seemed like someone capable of such a terrifying act. Otherwise, he wouldn't have teased her and then let her go. She never expected to encounter this hateful person again, but it was clear that he had changed over the years. The naive Mu Chen from their first meeting was gone, replaced by someone whose seriousness carried a sharp, almost blade-like coldness, which made his once handsome face even more captivating. With this thought in mind, Wu Yingying's delicate face suddenly turned red. She quickly spat out in frustration, wishing she could tear this guy into pieces. How could he possibly have such thoughts? Behind her, Deng Tong and the others saw the girl's ever-changing expressions and exchanged looks, but dared not disturb her. Mu Chen stood on the stone platform, gazing at the war puppet that had been sliced in half. He let out a soft sigh of relief, wiping the blood stain from his forehead. The war puppet was indeed strong, but after all, it was just a puppet. It could rely on its instincts to fight, but it could never compare to a real human being. However, Chen had to admit, this damn puppet was quite troublesome. Well, at least it's finally dealt with. Chen smirked and kicked the war puppet aside. Then, he lifted his head, his gaze burning as he looked toward the end of the stone platform. There, in the jade lotus altar, the 9-sun spirit fungus was swaying, its crystal-clear branches and leaves shimmering. 9 blazing orbs of light, like the scorching sun, slowly swayed, emitting an incredibly intense spiritual energy fluctuation. The 9-sun spirit fungus. This long-desired treasure was finally his. He stepped forward quickly, heading toward the 9-sun spirit fungus. However, just as Chen was about to reach the 9-sun spirit fungus, a burst of light suddenly gathered beside the jade lotus altar. This unexpected change immediately startled Chen. Could it be that even after defeating the war puppet, he still couldn't claim the 9-sun spirit fungus? The light gradually condensed in Chen's vigilant gaze, eventually forming the white-haired elder from before. Chen warily looked at the elder, cupping his fists and saying, "Senior, I've defeated the war puppet. This 9-sun spirit fungus should be mine now, right?" Although he knew that the white-haired elder before him was merely a remnant spiritual shadow with no intelligence, he still maintained a degree of politeness. The white-haired elder did not respond but simply stared at Chen. Chen frowned, then his pupils suddenly contracted as he noticed that the elder's eyes, which had once been empty, now seemed to have something in them, no longer as emotionless as before, almost as if they were alive. Unexpectedly, I can still see someone using the divine art of my wood god temple. The white-haired elder's lips moved slightly, and a hoarse, ancient voice slowly echoed. Chen's expression changed dramatically as he stared at the elder. The elder's voice now carried real emotion, unlike before. He was nearly indistinguishable from a living person. This white-haired elder still had intelligence. "Don't be nervous. It's just that you used the divine art of my wood god temple, which activated a sliver of consciousness hidden within my spiritual shadow. But this consciousness will soon dissipate," the white-haired elder said indifferently. Hearing this, Chen secretly breathed a sigh of relief and asked, "May I know your esteemed name, senior? With the wood god temple long gone, what use is there in remembering my name?" The white-haired elder sighed softly, his voice filled with sorrow. "You are quite a fine seedling, but unfortunately, you are not a disciple of my wood god temple." He sounded regretful, having witnessed Chen's battle with the war puppet after his consciousness had been activated by the heavenly wood divine wheel. Chen was taken aback, as if he caught something hidden in the elder's words. He blinked rapidly, then smiled. "If Senior is willing, I could become a nominal disciple of the wood god temple." The white-haired elder seemed to smile slightly as he looked at Chen and said, "You're quite a clever little fellow." Chen chuckled. The white-haired elder was clearly a stubborn old man. Even though the wood god temple had already vanished, making the title of a nominal disciple practically meaningless, it was clear that Chen's words had struck a chord with him. Otherwise, no matter how much the elder admired Chen, he wouldn't have shown any sign of approval. The white-haired elder stroked his beard, then snapped his fingers. A green light shot out from his fingertip and entered Chen's forehead, where it transformed into an ancient tree pattern. The pattern quickly faded. "Your heavenly wood divine wheel must have come from the divine wood steel, and similar divine arts can also be found in other divine wood steels. If you have the opportunity, you might be able to obtain the lesser divine art from the other 5 divine wood steel pieces. The items I gave you earlier will help with the fusion, and when the time comes, you'll be pleasantly surprised," said the white-haired elder with a faint smile. "Thank you, senior." Chen's heart was filled with joy, and he quickly clasped his fists in gratitude. The white-haired elder waved his hand, then gently tapped the jade lotus altar with his palm. A burst of light erupted from within the altar, causing the massive lotus to rapidly shrink. Along with it, the 9-sun spirit fungus also shrank. In just a few breaths, The lotus was only as big as a palm, with an exquisite 9-sun spirit fungus inside. With a flick of his sleeve, the white-haired elder sent the jade lotus altar flying toward Mu Chen, who eagerly caught it. The 9-sun spirit fungus was finally in his hands. Go ahead. To truly inherit the wood god temple's legacy, you'll need to rely on your own strength. The white-haired elder took a deep breath of the air in the world. His eyes half closed as he murmured, "Ah, such nostalgia." Mu Chen could see the light in the elder's eyes dim rapidly, until they once again became hollow, indicating that the lingering consciousness had completely vanished. Mu Chen stored the jade lotus altar and bowed to the white-haired elder before turning and leaping off the stone platform. Mu Chen landed beside Luo Li and Wen Qingxian, smiling at the two women. "I didn't disgrace myself, did I?" Luo Li smiled and lightly nodded her head. "It was just nothing to be proud of. If it were me facing that war puppet, it wouldn't have been able to force me into such a situation," Wen Qingxian said disdainfully, her red lips curling in pride. Though Mu Chen's victory over the war puppet was impressive, she wouldn't admit to it in front of him. Mu Chen smiled helplessly. After all, his spiritual energy cultivation was still behind Wen Qingxuan's, Luo Li's, and the others. If he had the strength of the spiritual energy tribulation, defeating the war puppet would have been much easier. "How about you all give it a try?" Mu Chen asked, glancing at Luo Li, Wen Qingxian, Su Huang, and the others. According to the rules of Spiritual Treasure Mountain, he had already successfully passed the challenge and obtained the 9-sun spirit fungus, so he could no longer continue challenging. However, Luo Li and the others still had a chance. After all, there were many rare treasures in Spiritual Treasure Mountain that could greatly boost their strength if obtained. When Qingxian and Luo Li didn't hesitate and nodded. Since they were here, they certainly wouldn't leave empty-handed. Even though Mu Chen had taken the best 9-sun spirit fungus, there were still many other valuable spiritual items. "Can we do it?" Su Huang, Zhao Qingshan, and the others exchanged looks, some hesitation in their eyes. After all, the consequences of failure were too severe. Choose a level based on your strength. Don't pick too high a level. You should all be able to win, Mu Chen smiled and reassured them. All right. Su Huang and the others gritted their teeth. The few charming girls in Wen Qingxuan's group were determined not to back down. If they showed fear now, it would be too embarrassing. Meanwhile, outside Spiritual Treasure Mountain, the atmosphere grew lively again. It seemed that the previous tragic scene had been washed away by Mu Chen's victory. While no one dared to recklessly challenge again, many began preparing to take on challenges within their capabilities and acquire some rare treasures. Let's begin. Seeing other teams ready to take action, Mu Chen smiled and urged them on. Luo Li and Wen Qingxian nodded. Then their bodies transformed into streaks of light, heading straight for the 8th layer of Spiritual Treasure Mountain. At this point, the only level left for them to choose from was the 8th layer. The 9-sun spirit fungus on the 9th layer had already been taken. Seeing Luo Li and the others make their move, Pin Air, Lu Air, and Inya also took action, choosing the 6th layer. The war puppets there had strength comparable to the spiritual energy tribulation, but with their ample trump cards, the 3 women were not afraid. Su Huang and his team were slightly weaker, so they could only choose the 5th layer, where the war puppets possessed the strength of the physical body tribulation, which was just right for them to handle. Their actions broke the tense atmosphere in the area, and other teams couldn't hold back any longer. Streaks of light flashed as they also rushed into Spiritual Treasure Mountain. Among them, Wang Zhong and Wu Yingying made it to the highest, the 8th layer, clearly confident in their own strength. The intense battles erupted one after another on the stone platform. This time, the situation was significantly better than before. After assessing the strength of the war puppets, many teams had a high chance of victory. Except for a few who were truly unlucky and performed poorly in battle, most of the teams eventually defeated the war puppets and successfully acquired a rare treasure. The winds howled as figures with faces full of joy rushed back from the stone platform. The entire Spiritual Treasure Mountain was filled with a festive atmosphere. Of course, there were also some teams with disheveled appearances and pale faces. Not only had they failed to acquire any rare treasures, but they also suffered the loss of some team members being captured. It could be said that their journey in the Spiritual Academy Grand Competition had come to an abrupt end. As expected, Luo Li and Wan Qingxian returned successfully. The war puppet they faced was powerful, but not to the extent of a first divine soul tribulation, so their victory seemed relatively easy. Compared to Mu Qin's earlier fierce battle, this was clearly a different scenario. What rare treasure did you acquire? Mu Qin asked, curious. Luo Li smiled gracefully, her jade hand clenched, and a burst of light gathered to form a jade lotus altar. In the altar, a fiery red vine appeared. The vine resembled a crimson dragon, with tiny scales on its surface, and it seemed to contain flowing lava, emitting a scorching aura. This is the crimson dragon vine, born in magma. Its magma liquid has the ability to refine the divine soul. If refined, it can enhance the soul and increase the chances of overcoming the divine soul tribulation, Luo Li explained. This is the Ice Mountain Snow Spirit Fruit. Its properties are the opposite of Luo Li's Crimson Dragon Vine, but it also has significant effects on the divine soul. It's a good item for overcoming the divine soul tribulation, Wan Qingxian said, holding a snow-white fruit that seemed to be encased in ice, radiating an extreme cold aura. Nice, Mu Qin praised. These rare treasures that could enhance the divine soul were certainly of great value at their level. Not long after Luo Li and Wan Qingxian returned, Pin Er and Su Huang also successfully passed their challenges. Judging by the joy in their eyes, they clearly had significant gains. This made Mu Qin smile. It seemed that their journey to Spiritual Treasure Mountain had been quite fruitful. Whoosh! The intense battles on Spiritual Treasure Mountain were gradually nearing their end. Wang Zhong and the others finally emerged. There were visible signs of battle on his body, indicating that he had just gone through a fierce fight. Let's go. Wang Zhong emerged and cast a dark glance at Mu Qin, his eyes filled with wariness. He waved his hand, signaling the two teams from Sacred Spirit Academy to quickly retreat. They had also made good gains, but after the intense battle, they were in a weakened state. Wang Zhong feared Mu Qin might make a move against them, as there was only one opportunity to enter Spiritual Treasure Mountain. This meant that if they didn't seize other teams' treasures, each team could acquire no more than 5. Mu Qin watched their retreating figures with a faint smile, not doing as Wang Zhong expected by intercepting them. There were many people here, and since he had already acquired the 9-Sun Spirit Fungus from the 9th layer, many were secretly eyeing him. Though these people didn't dare to act recklessly due to the strong lineup on his side, if they saw an opportunity, they might cause trouble. Thus, this wasn't the time to act. Having obtained the 9-Sun Spirit Fungus, Mu Qin wasn't particularly concerned with other rare treasures. After Wang Zhong, Wu Yingying and her team also emerged smoothly. She glanced at Mu Qin with a cold snort, then swiftly led the Martial Spirit Academy's teams away. Mu Qin looked at her retreating figure and shook his head helplessly. He didn't have much ill will toward Wu Yingying, but it seemed the girl had some kind of grudge against him. What's the matter? Can't bear to see her go? Wan Qingxian teased, smiling. Do you know who Wu Yingying's older brother is? Her older brother? For Wu Ling, Mu Qin was not a stranger. He had crossed paths with him in the Spirit Road before, so he was well aware of Wu Ling's strength. To some extent, Wu Ling was a tricky opponent, not inferior to Jixin. Such a foe was one Mu Qin did not want to provoke too much. Although he had clashed with Wu Ling in the Spirit Road, compared to his battles with Jixin, they were nothing more than minor skirmishes with little significant enmity between them. However, Mu Qin never expected that Wu Ling would be Wu Yingying's older brother. This was a headache for him. If Wu Ling ever found out how he had treated his sister, Mu Qin wasn't sure how the situation would unfold. You really are unlucky. The most troublesome person in the Spirit Road has become your opponent, Wan Qingxian said, gleefully. True. But you're the biggest challenge for me. The one who claimed the Spirit Crown in the Spirit Road, Mu Qin smiled, looking at Wan Qingxian with a meaningful glance. His words hinted not only at Wan Qingxuan's unusual feelings for Luo Li, but also carried deeper implications. While they were currently cooperating, when the final tournament came, Mu Qin knew he might end up facing Wan Qingxian. And for this proud girl, his wariness ran as deep as his caution toward the top figures in the Spirit Road like Jixin and Wu Ling. That's too bad. If I ever get the chance, I won't hold back, when Qingxian replied, her lips curling with a hidden meaning. What should we do next? Luoli, seeing the tension between the two, gave a helpless smile and shifted the topic. Mu Chen rubbed his forehead where the tree mark from the white-haired elder still lingered. Within that mark, Mu Chen had gained much insight into the Wood God Temple, and now he was quite familiar with the layout of the Wood God Temple ruins. He raised his head, his gaze settling on the southwest, where the lush greenery stretched to the horizon. According to the information he had obtained from the tree mark, in that direction was a special area within the Wood God Temple ruins. It was a critical location, said to be where the supreme spiritual liquid of the entire Wood God Temple was stored. A collection of supreme spiritual liquid left behind by an ancient force was enough to make any supreme powerhouse's heart race. And Mu Chen was no exception. Whoosh! Above the lush forest, 10 streaks of light shot through the sky, their sharp whistling sound piercing the air. These 10 figures were none other than Mu Chen and his group, leaving Spiritual Treasure Mountain. Thanks to the information they received from the white-haired elder about the Wood God Temple ruins, Mu Chen saved the time he would have wasted searching aimlessly. Instead, he led everyone straight to places rumored to house great treasures. For example, their next destination was a place known as the Spirit Treasury Hall. The Spirit Treasury Hall was of equal importance to the Wood God Temple, if not greater. It housed a large collection of supreme, spiritual liquid left behind by the Wood God Temple. This could be considered one of the most tempting collections of any great force. Supreme spiritual liquid, such a rare substance, was one of the standards by which the strength and depth of a force were measured, even in the vast, boundless great thousand worlds. Only a supreme powerhouse had the ability to refine this liquid. A first-grade supreme powerhouse could spend an entire month in intense cultivation to refine just a single drop. This clearly showed how precious supreme spiritual liquid truly was. Once a person's strength surpassed the 3 minor supreme tribulations, the importance of supreme spiritual liquid became crucial. To break through to the supreme stage, vast amounts of this liquid were necessary. Only the pure, vast power contained in the supreme spiritual liquid could enable a person to undergo the transformation and ascend to the supreme level. This stage represented a monumental shift in one's cultivation, a transformation that could change everything. Only by reaching the supreme level could one truly venture through the great thousand worlds and be called a true powerhouse, earning the respect and awe of others. For countless cultivators, entering the supreme stage was the ultimate goal of their life's cultivation. Yet, many talented individuals were unable to break through. Their journeys halted just before reaching that realm. This stage not only required immense talent, but also an extraordinary amount of resources. Ordinary forces can never cultivate true supreme powerhouses. Only those with deep, vast foundations, the great influential powers, have the ability to create such supremes and dominate the great thousand worlds. In the great thousand worlds, there are even some supreme powerhouses who, in order to obtain enough supreme spiritual liquid, willingly serve in powerful forces, becoming offerings or elders. They exchange their strength for status and the essential resources for cultivation, the supreme spiritual liquid. Moreover, the symbol of a supreme powerhouse, the supreme law body, also requires an immense amount of supreme spiritual liquid. The more powerful the supreme law body, the greater the amount of supreme spiritual liquid required. It is said that among the 99 ranked supreme law bodies in the world, even the one ranked last requires thousands of drops of supreme spiritual liquid to successfully cultivate. And those thousands of drops of supreme spiritual liquid, if refined by a first-grade supreme alone, would likely take almost 10 years to condense enough of this quantity. Thus, supreme spiritual liquid is as indispensable to supreme powerhouses as money is to ordinary people. Because of this, when Mu Chen learned that the supreme spiritual liquid left behind by the Wood God Temple was stored in the Spirit Treasury Hall, he almost immediately set off to retrieve it. He had already entered the realm of the physical body tribulation and was getting closer to the supreme stage, but he had not a single drop of supreme spiritual liquid. After all, he had no powerful sect or clan backing him. Although his mother seemed extraordinarily strong and came from a terrifying place, Mu Chen, in his current state, could not receive any help from that place. In fact, if someone from that mysterious land discovered him, he feared his fate would be bleak. Otherwise, his mother wouldn't have painfully left when he was young. Mu Chen's figure turned into a streak of light, racing through the sky. He gazed ahead, took a deep breath, and slowly clenched his fist. Without a powerful background, he could only rely on himself. Behind him, Luo Li and Wan Qingxian followed closely. Wan Qingxian, in particular, showed even more interest in the supreme spiritual liquid than in the spiritual treasure mountain. Clearly, she understood just how vital the supreme spiritual liquid was for them. Therefore, she had no objections to Mu Chen leading the way. Instead, she continually urged the others to speed up, lest they arrive too late and miss even a single drop of supreme spiritual liquid. The group quickened their pace, soaring through the sky. Along the way, they passed several areas where spiritual light appeared, a clear sign that someone had discovered a treasure, sparking competition. However, Mu Chen and his group didn't even glance at these spots, maintaining their speed as they headed straight for the Spirit Treasury Hall. Compared to the supreme spiritual liquid, these other treasures held little allure. After about 20 minutes of full-speed travel, their pace finally slowed. Mu Chen's figure moved again, dropping from a peak and focusing his gaze ahead. Before him lay an area densely filled with thorn iron trees. These trees, pitch black in color, were covered in sharp spikes, giving off a chilling aura. Some of these spikes even emitted a faint purple glow, indicating they were highly toxic. Mu Chen's gaze pierced through the towering thorn iron trees, and in the deepest part, he vaguely saw the traces of ancient palaces. However, these ancient structures were completely surrounded by the thorny trees, the iron spikes extending outward like a hedgehog's quills. The Spirit Treasury Hall should be at the very center of this thorn ironwood forest. Mu Chen pointed to the deepest part of the forest. We should hurry. Su Huang and the others were eager to go, planning to fly directly over the thorn ironwood forest. Wait! Mu Chen waved his hand to stop them. His brow furrowed as he said, "Something doesn't feel right." He could faintly sense a peculiar fluctuation emanating from the vast thorn ironwood forest, one that felt familiar. Mu Chen furrowed his brows and suddenly clenched his fist. A long sword spirit artifact appeared in his hand. Infusing it with spiritual power, he flicked his fingers, sending the energy-infused sword directly above the thorn ironwood forest. As the spirit sword shot into the air, Mu Chen and the others immediately saw the spiritual energy on the sword vanish in an instant. Then, the sword seemed to lose its spiritual support and fell from the sky, plummeting into the thorn ironwood forest. Finally, it was pierced through by the sharp iron thorns. Hiss! Su Huang and the others gasped in shock. These thorn ironwood thorns were incredibly sharp. Although the sword was only a low-grade spiritual weapon, it wasn't exactly fragile. Moreover, how did the spiritual energy on the weapon suddenly disappear? What's going on? When Qingxian furrowed her brows slightly, Mu Chen frowned and then looked towards a nearby team that seemed to be peeking at them. He waved his sleeve, and a spiritual energy whip shot out, forcibly pulling one of the members of the team over. What's going on here? Mu Chen asked, staring at the young man he had captured. The young man, seeing how easily Mu Chen had captured him, didn't resist. He raised his hands and said, "We mean no harm. We were just watching from here. Also, this area is off limits. Once you enter, your spiritual energy will disappear." Mu Chen let him go, squinted slightly, and then said softly, "I see. This area must be surrounded by a forbidden spirit array." No wonder the fluctuation felt somewhat familiar. It was a spirit array. A forbidden spirit array? Luo Li said in surprise. This kind of spirit array is not low-level. It looks like it was left behind by the Wood Divine Temple. Mu Chen nodded. A forbidden spirit array of this scale would likely require the combined effort of several spiritual array masters to set up. The participants in the Spiritual Academy Grand Competition certainly wouldn't have the ability to arrange something like this. Looks like we can't fly over then. If we do, and our spiritual energy vanishes, we'll probably end up like that spiritual weapon, Mu Chen said. But if we go in, We won't be able to use our spiritual energy, when Qingxian said, her brows furrowed. Their greatest strength was their powerful spiritual energy. Once they lost that advantage, her combat power would likely drop by 70 to 80%. Mu Chen nodded slightly. He then seemed a little distracted. This area was somewhat like the Spirit Road, except that the Spirit Road was far more dangerous than this. I advise you not to go in, the young man suddenly said. Why? This area is now occupied by the Alliance of Academies. They have a large number of people, and you won't be able to fight them if you go in, the young man said, sneaking a glance at the dazzling Wen Qingxian and Luoli. They probably won't dare to provoke you outside, but once you're in, it's a different story. Several groups have come through already, but they were all defeated by the Alliance of Academies. They seem to be well prepared, having selected many who specialize in physical cultivation. Even if their spiritual energy is gone, they are still quite strong. Mu Chen's brows furrowed. The Alliance of Academies, Su Huang and the others' expressions also turned grim. None of them had particularly refined their physical bodies. Once their spiritual energy vanished, the enemy's numbers would probably double, and they would be in an extremely awkward position. This cursed place was truly troublesome. Luoli looked at Mu Chen. In this situation, their advantage in numbers was greatly diminished. If they rushed in, they might end up walking straight into the trap set by the Alliance of Academies. Mu Chen stared at the dark thorn ironwood forest, fell silent for a moment, and then slowly said, "You stay outside. I'll go in alone." Alone? Upon hearing Mu Chen's words, Su Huang and the others immediately changed their expressions. The Alliance of Academies had a large number of people. Even if they encountered them outside, with their numerical advantage, they would have to tread carefully. What's more, with the Forbidden Spirit Array in place, once they lost their spiritual energy, even someone who had passed the spiritual energy tribulation, or even the divine soul tribulation, would be greatly weakened. "No way," Luoli said with a furrowed brow, gripping her Luo god sword. "I'll go with you. My physical body may not be as strong as yours, but it's definitely much stronger than most others." It was clear that Luoli wasn't at ease with Mu Chen going into the sealed area alone. "I'll go with Luoli," Wen Qingxian said casually. "Otherwise, if you take all the supreme spiritual liquid for yourself, our efforts will have been for nothing." Mu Chen couldn't help but laugh and sigh. Mu Chen saw the expressions of the two women and clearly understood that he couldn't persuade them. Luoli was concerned about him, while Wen Qingxuan's pride was clearly at play. She wouldn't allow herself to look like she was relying on Mu Chen's efforts to gain benefits. Therefore, she wouldn't let him go on this dangerous mission alone, sharing the rewards without contributing. Mu Chen had to admit, sometimes Wen Qingxuan's pride was truly impressive. "Then let's all go in together and give it a try," Mu Chen said decisively. Although the three of them were a bit outnumbered, none of them were ordinary people. Even though the Alliance of Academies might have the advantage in numbers, he believed that with their abilities, they could handle it. Upon seeing Mu Chen relent, Luoli smiled slightly. "You three stay here and wait for us," Mu Chen said, turning to Su Huang, Pin Er, and Lu Er. The three nodded. Although they didn't want Mu Chen to take risks, if they followed him inside, they might not only fail to help but also become a burden. Pin Er, Lu Er, and Enya looked at Wen Qingxian. After receiving a slight nod from her, they agreed. "Let's go. I'm curious to see just how greedy the Alliance of Academies is, trying to monopolize the Spirit Treasury Hall," Mu Chen said, his black eyes flashing with cold light as he looked toward the depths of the thorn ironwood forest. He had no good feelings for the Alliance of Academies and would never allow them to take such a valuable treasure as the Spirit Treasury Hall. With a wave of his hand, Mu Chen leaped down from the mountain peak. A flash of light appeared, and he was instantly standing in front of the dark thorn ironwood forest. Inside the forest, everything was shrouded in eerie darkness. A faint chill spread through the air, causing the skin to tingle with cold. Mu Chen lightly tapped the ground with his toes, and without hesitation, he darted into the forest. As he entered the shadowy depths of the thorn ironwood forest, he suddenly felt the spiritual energy within his body freeze, as if it had solidified. His expression turned serious. He concentrated and tried to channel his spiritual energy, but it remained unresponsive. The faint spiritual glow on his body dimmed, and the immense power that could shatter mountains quickly faded, leaving him feeling weak. It was extremely uncomfortable. Truly worthy of the forbidden spirit array, Mu Chen muttered, frowning. Behind him, Luo Li and Wen Qingxian were also following closely, their faces solemn. They, too, had noticed their own spiritual energy had become frozen. In this place, spiritual energy had completely lost its effect. Do you get that familiar feeling? Mu Chen slowly clenched his fist and glanced at Luo Li and Wen Qingxian, smiling. Luo Li smiled faintly, her clear eyes showing a hint of nostalgia. The sensation here was indeed similar to that of the Spirit Road. Back then, they couldn't use spiritual energy, relying only on their true skills. Perhaps recalling the many life and death battles they had fought side by side on the Spirit Road, Luo Li's gaze toward Mu Chen softened. Looks like we'll have to use some of these small tricks. Mu Chen took out a black cloak and handed it to Luo Li. The cloak blended perfectly with the surroundings, effectively concealing her figure. This method wouldn't work outside, but in a place where spiritual energy couldn't be sensed, visual observation was the primary method. Luo Li took the cloak and put it on, immediately hiding her slender figure beneath it, leaving only her delicate, fair face exposed. Here, Mu Chen said, handing another black cloak to Wen Qingxian. It's so ugly, Wen Qingxian hesitated, her strong sense of cleanliness making her reluctant to wear something Mu Chen had provided. Who knew if he had worn it before? You stand out too much like this. Mu Chen glanced at the girl before him. Her golden battle armor tightly wrapped her graceful figure, accentuating her tempting curves. This sight would undoubtedly catch eyes even outside, let alone in such a plain environment. When Qingxian seemed to notice the way Mu Chen was looking at her body, she shot him a fierce glare, snatched the cloak from his hands, and put it on. Mu Chen smiled, then took out a black robe to cloak his body. With a flick of his hand, he turned and rushed into the dark forest. Behind him, the two women followed closely. In the dark forest, the light was extremely dim. The thorn iron trees stretched out their branches, sharp like iron spikes, casting grim shadows on the ground. These shadows writhed like evil spirits, sending a chill down the spine. Swish! Amidst the shifting shadows, 3 dark figures silently darted past, moving swiftly under the cover of the darkness. Mu Chen and the two women were all elites within the Spirit Road, and they had experienced even more dangerous environments than this. As a result, their stealth was highly skilled. They moved effortlessly, completely concealed by the shadows, while their eyes, sharp as hawks, scanned the darker corners. As they wove between the shadows, Mu Chen's gaze suddenly flashed. He then hid behind a thorn iron tree. At the exact moment he stopped, Luo Li and Wen Qingxian also almost simultaneously took cover to the left and right. Mu Chen peered through the gaps in the branches of the thorn iron tree and looked ahead. Not far away in the darkness, the shadows twisted slightly, and a faint glimmer of cold light flickered, the shine of blade edges. There are 6 people, Mu Chen whispered. He had spotted 6 figures hidden in the shadows. These individuals were also very skilled in stealth, but they had forgotten to conceal the sharp, cold gleam of their swords and knives. Mu Chen raised his hand and made a subtle gesture. Upon seeing his signal, Luo Li immediately darted to the right. She and Mu Chen had long developed an exceptional level of coordination on the Spirit Road, and she could understand the meaning of any of his gestures. When Qingxian, slightly slower, was no less intelligent, she quickly understood and rushed to the left. Seeing this, Mu Chen pushed off with his toes. His body darted upward, like a spirit monkey, climbing the sharp thorn iron tree. Not far away, in the dark, 6 watchful eyes constantly scanned the shadows. Their hands gripped their swords tightly. They were experienced in ambushes, lying perfectly still, hidden within the darkness. Though they remained motionless, their crossed gazes locked down the entire area. No movement, however small, would escape their notice. In the center of the 2 black figures, one of them, with his hand resting on a thorn iron tree, slightly shifted. He seemed to sense a faint tremor. He froze for a moment, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. His gaze swept around but found nothing unusual. After scanning the surroundings, he shook his head, his tense body relaxing slightly. But the moment his body relaxed, he suddenly felt a coldness rush toward his neck. Then, a sharp pain struck the back of his head. His vision went dark, and his body slowly slumped. Just as he was about to fall to the ground, a hand from behind propped him up, keeping him upright. In front of him, another comrade sensed something unusual, turned his head, and whispered, "What's going on?" In the shadows, his comrade waved his hand and extended his palm. The other man glanced at his comrade's hand, but didn't notice anything unusual. Before he could further question, the hand shot forward like lightning, grabbing his throat and silencing any sound he might make. Chen emerged from the shadows. He looked at the man he had seized by the throat. The man's face reddened, but he didn't make a sound. Chen raised his finger to his lips and quietly shushed him. The man could feel the coldness in Chen's eyes. Sweat poured down his face as he immediately ceased struggling, trembling in fear. He believed that if he made another move, his life would be forfeit. Chen smiled upon seeing him quiet down. He glanced toward the two directions not far to his left and right. The thorn iron trees there seemed to shudder for a moment before calming down. In the shadows, two slender figures quickly approached. "Got it," Luoli whispered. Seeing that the two women were unharmed, Chen nodded. He then grinned at the man he was holding, his face pale, and said slowly, "You're from the Alliance of Academies, right?"